Yo.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Hacking Health Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Canning, with Dave Kennedy.
Yo, welcome back. What are we going to do for an update? We've just updated people. Like we just stopped hit record and recording another one.
Well, I do want to say I skipped legs day yesterday. I skipped it
Why?
because my hamstrings hurt.
Okay. What about the rest of your legs?
I know. So here's my thought rationality behind it, because you're still going to be using your hammies, and it's been sore for like 3.5 weeks, and I haven't given it any time to relax. And so I was like, I'm just not going to do legs, and I'm going to chill, and I'm not going to do it, and I'm just going to give myself some time to recover. So I skipped legs.
Okay. I'm just gonna let you know that I'm disappointed. I will say, as somebody under your tweet earlier on commented about they wish that they had done push yesterday instead of legs, and I was going to reply, but I think the secret to never having to do leg day is do full body push and full body pull, and then you will, every day will be leg day, but no day will also be leg day. So mentally you're not doing, because I think for you, and me as well, the mental, like, fucking hell, I'm going to do leg day. Whereas today I did push and I have leg extension and I have leg press. But I'm like, I'm fine, because after that I get to do chest and shoulders and triceps. I'm like, fuck yeah. So that's the secret to leg day, is you can skip it every day, but you also have leg day every day.
Yeah, I hear you on that. Well, I it's funny because I went to Orange Theory on Wednesday, and I could barely like move my legs. Like my hamstring was just not doing good. And I let the trainer know. I'm like, hey, I did something to my hamstring. She's like, no problem. I'm like, I'm probably just going to take a chill. But it was one of those days where it's like, like 12 all outs, and I'm not going to back down from all outs. Like, those are my favorites. So, it's like full sprint mode. And so I definitely did full sprint modes. But I will say, after doing those 12 sprints, my hamstrings felt better. So I think I just need to push harder. And then it just like loosens up and it's good. So I think you just
For anybody listening, please do not do that. If you've got an issue with hamstring, please do not do what Dave just said. Right. So we're back. Our favorite topic, I will say. I will caveat this by saying we are not doctors. Like, do your research whenever it comes to supplements. If you need to ask your doctor, ask your fucking doctor. But I have evolved my supplement plan protocol recently for a number of reasons, and Dave just loves talking about supplements. So today we're going to talk about supplements. I'll give you a bit of a backstory as why I evolved my supplement protocol. And I think, you're the same as me in this. Like, we will continue to add things based on conversations you and I have, or research that we do, or somebody tweeted something, or our Lord and Savior Andrew Huberman said something. We're like, okay, yes, we'll get that. And then it gets to the stage where you're like putting all your supplements together and you've got all these pills and bottles and you're like, fucking hell, it's like so much. And then we just basically go back to the basics on it, like just start again. And then we gradually start to build it up.
That is the process. I know when I'm getting out of hand when I have like 40 pills that I have to take a day. I'm like, all right, I need to like.
You're putting it in a cup. You're like, why is this cup so fucking full?
Yeah. It gets ridiculous. Like, and I start from scratch, and it's like 5 pills.
Yeah.
And like 6 months later, it's back to 40 pills, and then I go back down again. It's just like this horrible cycle of supplements, for sure, no question.
Yes. I will also say, like, remember that the supplements is like the top of the pyramid. Like, do not start here. Like, you need to focus on nutrition, your habits, training, routine, stress management, all the other stuff. You need to focus on that first, and then we can look at supplementation. Because I think that people's immediate like, oh, I'm going to go on this fat loss journey. What supplements do I need to take? And like, bro, just like eat food and make sure that you recover first. Do that first. So yeah, the reason that I re-looked at my supplements was I got my blood panel back probably about 3 months ago, maybe. And there were a couple of things that had been recurring from the previous ones that I hadn't addressed. I basically was getting my blood and go, okay, right, well, everything's all right. So I did a bit of research. I had a conversation with James, and I was like, right, these are the things that I want. These are the things that are off in terms of my bloods, and these are the things that I want to improve. And that's how we have ended up going down this journey and what we're doing. So essentially, I'm basing it literally on like the data that I have from my bloods. It's not a case of, I saw some tweet about, well, some of it is, but it's not all about just some tweet or something that I heard on a podcast.
Yeah. And to emphasize the supplement thing, because that's the first thing I get asked. Like, I get asked by people like, hey, I'm just going to get into weightlifting. What supplements do I need to start taking? I'm like, nothing. Like, don't take any supplements whatsoever. Like, get to a pattern where you're being consistent, with your weightlifting. And then, if you're getting things like blood work and other things like that, you can supplement. There are a few things that I would recommend just as a normal, like daily life, thing that are super healthy for you. So vitamin D is like the godsend for our body. It's actually a hormone. It's not a vitamin. It's a hormone. It hits like 90% of our DNA structure. And it's been shown in multiple data studies on just so many different health benefits around longevity, living longer, anti-cancer effects, cardiovascular health, bone density, like overall like brain cognitive functionality. Like the benefits are like endless on what vitamin D provides. And we're usually deficient in vitamin D because we don't get out in the sun as much. So I would recommend supplementation of vitamin D, usually like around 5,000 IU per day is a good one. You want to couple that with K2 so that it absorbs better into your body. I actually do intramuscular vitamin D from an absorption perspective. So I do 20,000 IU a week, just one shot a week, and that is plenty. And I got my blood work done, and my vitamin D levels are right within the normal baselines. I get that through my, prescribed through my doctor. I'm not saying anybody has to do that. It's just, what works best for me instead of having to take, the pills distributed throughout the week. I just do one shot and it's good to go from there. But vitamin D is one of those. Fish oils, another one. So do your research on fish oils. There was a recent study that showed in a very small percentage of people, which is still statistically significant, it can, in the early stages, increase chances of stroke. It's, again, very minor piece of it. It's, for those mostly that already have cardiovascular issues. But the biggest thing with fish oils, it's like another thing for like vitamin D. It's like a miracle thing for our body. Cardiovascular health, cognitive function, overall longevity, like improves longevity substantially. I mean, they're saying fish oil can add, 5 to 10 years on your life alone, which is a pretty amazing statistic there. And there's some good data behind it. I mean, if you look at Japan, for example, one of the largest populations that live the longest, a lot of that has to do with the amount of fish they eat per day, i.e. getting amount of fish oils and omega-3 fatty acids in their body. And then the other one is creatine. If you're looking to get into some of that, creatine is not just for muscle mass, it's also for brain cognitive function. But with the latest data studies, it's shown that you really need to be taking 10 to 20 grams a day of creatine to get really the benefits, both for your muscle and your brain components. 10 grams seems to be the one for muscle development. 20 grams seems to be that for the cognitive functionality within your brain. And a lot of people will say, well, creatine adds water weight. Yes, it does, but it's water inside of your muscles. So it makes your muscles look more fuller, makes your muscles look bigger. And it also helps you from a recovery and muscle building perspective. So it's really a phenomenal supplement. And the other thing I'll say is it has zero impact on kidney. That's always a concern is, they've heard, hey, kidney functionality within creatine is not there or can impact it. It's not the case. Even the National Kidney Disease Association has come out and said creatine has no impact on kidney functionality. The biggest issue is that doctors that don't understand how to look at blood work will see elevated levels of creatinine in your blood levels because you're obviously taking creatinine, which can throw off your bun ratios, which is, the functionality between your kidney. And so, there's other blood tests that show, how well your kidney's functioning. It has nothing to do with how well you're filtering things within your kidney. So again, it's not bad on your kidney at all. So those are the three like staple supplements that I heavily recommend. And then you can start to build kind of a laundry list of things to add onto that if you want to. And we'll talk about some of those and why we do it. A lot of the two things that I look for when I'm looking at supplementation is one, what my blood work says. So my blood work, I get everything from, my cardiovascular health to my testosterone, estrogen levels to micronutrient testing to see like, hey, am I deficient in certain multivitamins or specific, micronutrients that my body needs to do certain things. And then I also look at the data studies, especially like the long-term data studies that show, specific benefits for certain types of supplementation that can improve overall health, not just, longevity, but also, brain power, keeping your brain healthy. One of my biggest, concerns, and should be concerned for everybody is Alzheimer's and any type of, cognitive decline. And there was a stat that I heard yesterday, 1 in 9 people over the age of 65 will be diagnosed with Alzheimer's, or early stages of Alzheimer's. 1 in 9. Like that's a pretty large statistic right there. And that's one of the things that like my brain goes like, just pull the cord. Like I'm not there anymore, like I'm good, so, that's one of my biggest fears. So like, what can I do to reduce my risk of cognitive decline, as I get older? What are the things that I can do to keep myself healthy? And what are the things I can do to balance my blood work so that I'm within the normal ranges at all times? And a combination of that too is blood pressure. Blood pressure is a very, very important metric for you in your health. If you have elevated high, pre-hypertension or hypertension level of blood pressure, statistically, you're not going to live as long as somebody that does not. You're going to have cardiovascular issues, insulin insensitivity, a lot of issues that can create diabetes and other things. Blood pressure is kind of our really good baseline of hey, is our heart working the way it needs to? Are we producing things the way it needs to? Is our cardiovascular system working the way it needs to? And so, I just got the new Whoop 50 MD. I think it's called MD. But what's nice about it that I really liked, I used to take once a month, I would take, the normal pad and I'd strap it on and I'd take my blood pressure just to make sure everything I'm doing is good. What's really cool with the Whoop is the very first time you use it, you use one of those wraps, the medical wraps that you can get done at a store, or if you have one at your house, and you take your blood pressure and you input in, I think it's like 3 or 4 different baselines. And then from there, Whoop actually has sensors now that can take daily blood pressure statistics every single day. So you don't have to wear the strap. It does it based on its sensors that it has inside of the Whoop device itself. It's very innovative. And so now we get daily blood pressure monitoring, and mine's all been within check. I mean, if I look at my Whoop program today, I get into it real quick here. So today I was at 117/76, which is perfect, right? And I can go back every single day and say, okay, what was it yesterday? What was it the week? And what's my monthly trend? Are there times where it's elevated or not? It's really good for at least giving some of those. So it's not just the supplementation aspect of things. It's also looking at my whole body and saying, what can I do to make it better? Or what can I do to make sure that I live longer? What can I do to give myself the best chance possible, to not die of things like cancer, or to die of things of cardiovascular disease, or to have mental decline? Like, we have a lot of great data on that now to help prevent that. And there's new data studies coming out, which we'll talk about one of the more recent ones around taurine and cancer. There's a lot of things that we can learn from these data studies that really, continue to just get better over time of how we can live longer.
Yeah, agree. And I think, first of all, if anybody doesn't have a blood pressure monitor, go and fucking buy one. Like, they're like $30 on Amazon. Like, that is something you should be checking on a regular basis, because, and it's something that you can improve. So yes, I would definitely recommend having one of those and checking it regularly. Like, not just when you go for your annual checkup and they check it and they go, well, it's fucked now because of whatever. The second thing is, what you said there about looking at your bloods. That's essentially what I'm going to talk about here, is like what was flagged and what we have done to improve it. And then, probably in about a month's time, I'll get my bloods done again, and then we can see if it's actually been beneficial. So all of this stuff has been added in, adjusted. It's not always just supplementation. Some of it's lifestyle change, and we can talk through that based on information from my blood work, and it's all intentional. Aside from creatine, we had a conversation about that. I've seen a lot of people doing 20 grams. I just thought what actually happened was there was one night I didn't sleep at all, like zero sleep. And I remember reading, before we did the last podcast on creatine, I remember reading about one single dose of 25 to 30 grams of creatine in the morning after not sleeping will really help throughout the day. And I cannot tell you how much it helped me throughout that day. So since then, I've just been having the upper end dose of 20 grams. And you go through, I ran out because I was, obviously you buy fucking creatine once every fucking 100 years because, you use it, at so little at the 5 grams. So I've been having the 20 grams, and we can talk about that at a different time. But aside from that, everything has been done based on bloods and everything that we've seen. So something that was flagged was inflammation, essentially like gut and systematic stress, or elevated inflammatory markers, and then disrupted digestion. What we added, psyllium husk from a fiber aspect. Fiber is something that I talk about quite a lot with clients, and the biggest problem is, number one, understanding like what your target should be in terms of fiber. Number two, a lot of clients struggle to hit that target based on how they're tracking it. So you'll maybe notice this yourself, that a lot of the products that you track on MyFitnessPal or insert whatever app, they don't always have the fiber number in it. They'll obviously focus on not everything, but the majority of stuff, they'll focus on the protein, carbs, and fats. So a lot of the time the fiber piece is missing. So I just started supplement with psyllium husk in the morning, essentially just for like overall digestive health and reducing the gut load on the whole. Support Max Neuro PM. This is for systemic inflammation and better sleeping. I have it up here and I'm going to read the ingredients of it. It's everything that we've talked about before, but in one product. And I don't know if it's available over there, but it is fucking like so well stacked. Magnesium biglycinate, vitamin B6, zinc, vitamin B12, L-taurine, ashwagandha, lion's mane, L-theanine, and then black pepper extract. And I have that about 45 to 60 minutes before I go to bed. So the majority of the stuff that we would supplement individually in that one, now I do add other bits and pieces of the same thing into it to just increase the dose. But in terms of adding that, like it's definitely helped with sleep overall. And then something that isn't necessarily a supplement, more of a lifestyle change, is actually like being more cognizant of how and when I eat. So when I mean how, like instead of just fucking shoving food down, like actually be intentional of like, I can remember Callum saying this many, many years ago. He says you should be chewing every bite of food between 20 and 30 times because that is essentially the start of the digestive process. I think everybody listening, there's absolutely no way that you chew your food that amount of times. It's maybe like 3 times and you swallow it because you're in the middle of doing something. So being a lot more intentional with my chewing and my digestion, also like my surroundings. So not like being in a high stress state or trying to shovel food in, and just being in a better position overall in terms of that. And then timing around, when I'm eating and around stress markers and evening times and stuff like that. So that's how we've handled inflammation. And actually it's funny, I was going through my check-in with James on Monday, and I have obviously my photos from week 1 of when we started again. And you can tell by looking at me, I'm inflamed, which is a fucking hard thing to comprehend if you don't know what I'm talking about. But like you can see from the photos, there's inflammation in my body. I don't have it anymore because we've addressed those things. I'm obviously a lot leaner. So addressing that from an inflammation perspective. Other things that were off were cortisol ratios. So LDL was too high and HDL was too low. This is one thing that I've ignored for too long. I think, no, that's fine. What we did was increase cardio, which, I mean, everybody knows at this point how I feel about cardio, but I've had to do it and I feel much better for it. We increased the omega-3s in the fish oils. Now, I want to talk about the one that I take, and I'm not saying that you need to take this one, but again, it's the one that I have reintroduced. Antarctic krill oil. So it's not just a fish oil. And the per serving, so two capsules is a serving, which is 1,200 milligrams. I'm taking 6 capsules, so 3,600 milligrams. Again, because there's a lot of studies around like a much higher dose on that to then rebalance your LDL and HDL and overall your cortisol levels, and then just reduce saturated fat and then small dietary shifts within that just to balance those out. From a liver enzymes perspective, they were slightly elevated AST and LTL. So we added in liver support system like NAC, milk thistle, and TUTCA, as well as the support max. And then kept hydration up and made sure sodium intake was good. So obviously, making sure that I'm staying on top of the electrolytes in the morning and salting food appropriately, because it's not just about being hydrated, it's about having an understanding that your body can actually absorb the water and actually hydrate itself. Back to the LDL and HDL, but from a cardiovascular support. Again, cardio up, fiber stacks and omega-3s have helped with that. And then obviously increasing my like low intensity output, i.e. steps essentially. So that'll help with overall lipid health in the movement and then just consistency around fiber. There were a couple of vitamin and mineral deficiencies. So vitamin B was low, vitamin D was low. So we addressed that. I just basically doubled the dose of B complex that I was taking and doubled the dose, like probably a 1,500 IUs of vitamin D daily in the morning, and then introduced magnesium glycate in the evening for sleep relaxation and balancing insulin sensitivity. So there are things that I added, and then the creatine brought that up to 220 grams. And I think aside from pre-workout and protein powder, I think that's pretty much everything that I supplement with. Sometimes from a nootropic perspective, I'll add alpha GPC if I'm going into like a heavy work block or something like that. And I do sometimes have like lion's mane supplement as well, just from a focus perspective that isn't necessarily related to my bloods.
So one thing to notice about when I talk about my supplement stack is mine is almost completely different from Ben's, based on what I need for my body, right? And I just got my blood work done recently. I got it back about a week ago.
All of your blood.
It was all my blood. It was so. I did some DNA testing too to like there's a specific type of test you can get done that it has to do with how your body breaks down testosterone in your body, and it has to do with like a short and long structure within your DNA. And basically, if you have a short head or a long head, your body absorbs testosterone differently, which is why we see people that have, let's just say, 500 levels of testosterone that feel like total shit, and then you have 5 people with testosterone that feel absolutely amazing. Their ability to leverage that testosterone, aromatize that testosterone, leverage it for their entire body for all the benefits of testosterone are different based on our DNA. And so I got this test done, and it showed that I have essentially the one that the long, which means that I don't absorb testosterone as well, which would explain why I need higher levels of testosterone, which I run my levels of testosterone around 1,000, which works fine for me. But if I dip down into like the 600 or 500 range, I don't feel great. If I bump it up to like 13, 1400, I don't feel great. So that 1,000 mark for me was perfect to get that done. But the amount of blood that I had to give, it was all my blood. Like it was like 30 things. And I will say I'm very impressed because I was like, I know it's gonna be a lot of blood, so I'm gonna hydrate like a mother effer. And so I went into this lady, this old lady, grandma. She's amazing. Like she knows me in and out because I'm in there all the time. And she's like, "Hey, Dave, how's the kids? How's your wife? Are you guys going on vacation?" Like, she's like, "You got a lot today. Hope you hydrated." And so she butterflied me with IV. And I'm happy to report that I was able to get all of them out with one IV because there's been times where she's had to tap into other veins, to get more blood because I'm out of blood in that one vein. So it was good to get the test done. But I can say that this level of blood work that I had done and the results that I got back were astronomically better in almost every category because I've been supplementing appropriately. Plus, I also equate it to being on the deficit side. So when I was at 250 pounds, I was obviously pushing more weight, harder on my body, eating more foods, through the blood panels, right? So like when I got down to my normal weight around 220, 216. My blood panels also came back very well. So I think it was a combination of the two. But I'm going to talk a little about my supplement stack and why I do them. One of the things that I'm almost always deficient in is B12. So I switched to intramuscular shots of B12. So I do intramuscular shots of B12 and vitamin D and glutathione. It's kind of like my Monday ritual that I use along with the testosterone. And then, that's kind of like my go-to. I also use NAD in the morning, and I use the nasal spray for that. So I just have a nasal spray NAD. I just do 2 shots in my left nostril, 2 shots in my right nostril, and that has helped a lot with energy production. So with NAD studies have shown longevity impacts. Essentially NAD is a precursor to your ATP functions within your mitochondria cells that give us the energy that we need. And as we get older, NAD levels drop off. And what they've shown through the data studies is by elevating your NAD levels, lets you live longer. It also have a lot more energy throughout the day, which is great. So I do NAD as well. That's on the prescription side of the house. Getting into more of the supplementation side, in the morning, I take homeocysteine supreme. And homeocysteine supreme is a combination of homeocysteine supplements that really helps in a lot of different areas in your body. It helps with it's essentially an amino acid that helps with cardiovascular support. So it basically allows your cardiovascular system to work more healthier, reducing any type of risk of cardiovascular disease. It helps brain function, cognitive function through the methylation processes. And methylation has a number of different homeocysteine pathways have a number of different pathways, but the methylation process is really important for our brains. Detoxification. So basically, getting rid of any type of toxins in your body, your bloodstreams, things like that. Joint cartilage health, immune functionality. Like the list just goes on of things that it does. But one of the big areas that I take homeocysteine supreme for is its neuroprotective functionality, specifically around Alzheimer's and any other type of cognitive function. So they've been shown in the data studies that it's a neuroprotective and helps with brain functionality for people that may be more inclined to those types of diseases. So I take 2 of those pills in the morning. It's called homeocysteine supreme. And then I also take P5P, which is pyroxidol phosphate, 5-phosphate. It's an active form of B6. that is related to energy metabolism, brain health, mood regulation. It really helps with the neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA, which influence your mood, emotional responses, things like that. So it's really good for the brain, really good for mood regulation, really good for overall homeostasis health in your cardiovascular health, immune system support, red blood cell production. So, and it's a tiny, tiny pill. You only need a little tiny bit of this, but I use pure encapsulations version of that, P5P, just one pill a day for that one. And just like Ben, magnesium is so important. I always go on the fence of would that be my top 4 that I recommend for people, but I just don't want to overload people with like, hey, you should take fish oil, vitamin D, creatine, and magnesium. But magnesium is definitely up there, like in all aspects. There's been so many data studies, and you should take a look at Dr. Rhonda Patrick's podcast. She has a great podcast, and she went down to a lot of the data studies on magnesium. And it's something crazy. Like if you have a surplus of magnesium, i.e. you're supplementing with magnesium, your all-cause mortality reduces over 60%. Your chances of cancer are reduced over 60%. And your overall brain functionality improves cognitively over 50%. So it's like magnesium is like one of the most miracle type things, along with vitamin D, along with omega-3s, and along with creatine, that I'd recommend. And the one that I end up taking is it's the from Transparent Labs. They have an AM and PM stack for magnesium. So there's different types of magnesium that are digested differently and used in your body. And so the AM stack is magnesium L-threonate and magnesium oxide, which are threonate and oxide are used very heavily for energy production and cognitive function. So think of it in the morning as a boost of like a lot of caffeine, for your body, for your brain, for your body, to be able to leverage energy production, everything else that goes along with that. And then at night, I take the PM stack, which is magnesium biglycinate, magnesium, which is essentially magnesium N-taurinate, and then magnesium N-acetyl taurinate as well, and then magnesium biglycinate. So 3 different types of magnesiums that are really good for sleep, recovery, things like that. So I take magnesium in the morning and in the evening because they're so important. And then I also take NAC, which is basically it's an amino acid cysteine. And NAC is to me like the reason why I typically just don't get sick anymore. It helps with your overall immune functionality. It helps with brain health. Again, it's a very big neuroprotective thing for things like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. So it really helps with anti-inflammation and oxidative stress for that. And it also helps with like cardiovascular, respiratory, liver, helps with detoxification of your liver and kidneys. So again, like NAC to me is like a really big staple supplement. And then the omega-3 fatty acids, which I switched over to Animal Pack's Advanced Omegas. So they have essentially omega-3 fatty acids, but they also include omega-6 fatty acids as well. So they have a combination. So I think the total stack between EPA and DHA is 2,100 milligrams of EPA and 1,000 milligrams of DHA. And it's nice because it's in a pack. And then you also get the omega-6s, which is 2,400 milligrams of omega-6 fatty acids through sunflower seeds and boar seeds oil. So, for me, a little bit more potent, for the omega-3s, I kind of up the dosage a little bit. And I like the Animal Packs. It literally just comes in like a plastic pack. You open it up and you're taking those. And I think it's like 4 pills of fatty acids that you're putting in. And that's pretty much the stack that I stay consistent with. It's not that many pills. I will say I did forget to mention at night, I also take glycine. So leveraging glycine and magnesium together, again, much better way of enhancing sleep and recovery in your body. So I've noticed that my sleep scores are significantly improved when coupling magnesium and glycine together, which is good. So, those are basically my supplement stacks: homeostasis supreme, P5P, magnesium, NAC, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, vitamin B12, and glycine. So
Yeah, and like you said, completely different based on what your needs are. And I think number one, that's been an evolution over time. Like as you have changed, your needs in terms of supplementation have changed. There's things that you don't need now that you potentially needed before because you weren't in the same position as how you managed literally everything else. So it's something that check on a regular basis and make sure that you're supplementing correctly within it. I did a bit of I'll give a magnesium cheat sheet here because I think just giving it in one sentence will help. So different types of magnesium and when to use. For sleep and recovery, glycinate. For brain boost, threonate. For energy and performance, malate. For gut regularity, citrate. For heart and nervous system, taurate. And for a detox bath, sulfate. So like Epsom salts. So like that's 6 different types of magnesium with 6 different benefits. So if there's anything that you suffer with or want help with or could be better in, there's a fucking magnesium for it.
Yeah. Now, I do want to talk about taurine. Taurine is a non-essential amino acid, but it is an amino acid. And if you look at the data studies, there's so many data studies showing the benefits of taurine. Taurine has so many different aspects around cardiovascular support, overall health, brain health functionality, and taurine has been linked to multiple longevity studies that show supplementation with taurine increases lifespan. Okay. So taurine is a phenomenal amino acid. However, just recently there was a data study that showed a substantial increase in the around leukemia, so blood cancer that originates within your bones. That if you're taking taurine supplementation and you have leukemia, it's much harder. It becomes much more aggressive of a cancer, and it has to do not specifically with taurine, but the taurine transport as part of taurine. So what ends up happening is if you have an elevated level of taurine, the cancerous cells attach to the taurine transports of that and allows it to spread to your body much more effectively and much more aggressively than if you weren't leveraging something like taurine. So what doctors are recommending is that if you have leukemia, you should cut out all taurine as part of that. Now, taurine is very popular in energy drinks. It boosts cognitive function, boosts energy levels. So taurine is a very, again, well-studied supplement, very healthy, but there is a byproduct of it. It does not cause cancer. It does not cause leukemia. But if you do have leukemia and you have elevated levels of taurine, it can be something that you definitely want to remove from your supplementation stack. Now, I've watched so many different, doctors, people that specialize in these specific things talk about it. And they're saying, listen, we're not saying cut out taurine in any way, but if you're really risk adverse and you don't want that type of thing, then cut out taurine. The general consensus is taurine is still a phenomenal, amino acid for your body. It's used for a number of different things. It helps with longevity and living longer. But if you get diagnosed with something like leukemia, it's definitely something you want to take a look at. And it's like anything. It's like, when you get diagnosed with cancer, the first thing they do is tell you to cut out is sugar because, cancer leverages, it allows it to spread much faster and produce faster with sugar molecules that are in your body to spread faster. They say also you're doing things like intermittent fasting, and fasting is really good for cancer because, cancer cells typically are very hungry cells. So your body goes after those first to kind of deconstruct those. So, it's not like I would say, stop using taurine. I'm still going to leverage taurine as part of, for my energy drinks and things that I put in there. But it's one of those things that you need to be, cognizant of, that there are studies out there showing that, if you do have leukemia, it can be a much more aggressive form of leukemia, especially if you keep supplementing with taurine.
Yeah, there you go. But I think to your point about energy drinks, like it's not always supplementing with it and buying the product and taking the pill or the powder or whatever it is. There are potentials that's in other things that you're consuming.
Yeah. Yep. So, it does not cause cancer. And it requires very, very high dosages of it, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on for sure.
For sure. And I think overall, again, Dave and I are not doctors. We're just talking about our personal experience. And I would say, if we did this same podcast in 6 months, potentially our supplement list would be different. It is I always think that, this whole thing is a continued experiment, and we will continue to add things, take things away, and, make changes and adjustments in terms of the data. So I would recommend, number one, if you're serious about supplementation, first of all, fix all of the other problems that come in underneath it: your training, your recovery, your sleep, your stress, your nutrition. And then secondly, get a blood panel done and actually base it on the information, because it's easy just to start buying supplements because we have said so, or because you have read it on the internet or listened to a different podcast or whatever.
And I just want to read one data study here really quick, because, this is why it's so complex to like understand a lot of these things. So, like if you look at taurine, you see a study, it's like, oh, it causes cancer. Well, no, it doesn't cause cancer. It amplifies if you have a certain type of cancer. But then also taurine is anti-cancerogenic. So it does help prevent cancer. So there was a study back in 2022. Taurine is a natural amino acid that is found widely in a mammalian tissue. Several studies have demonstrated that taurine has anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and hypoglycemic effects, i.e., reducing your insulin insensitivity, helping you out with your overall body, blood pressure, things like that. Recently, taurine not only mitigates the side effects of chemotherapy in cancer, but also possesses anti-tumor properties, including inhibiting cancer cell proliferation and inducing apoptosis in certain cancers by differentiating, regulating pro-apoptotic and anti-apoptotic proteins. So again, there's studies out there to show it has anti-cancer effects, in most cancers. But again, if you have a certain type of cancer, you got to be really careful. So, what I read into this data study specifically is, if I get diagnosed with leukemia, I'm cutting out taurine, right? If I don't get diagnosed with leukemia, I'm leveraging taurine because of its health benefits. So just an FYI, they're more complex than what the headline says. There's a lot of other data studies, and there's so many data studies out there showing the benefits of taurine that I wouldn't cut it out or be concerned about it within, your supplementation stack, or if you're leveraging within energy drinks.
For sure. Agree. And I think it comes down to reading beyond what the headline says, because it will be clickbait and just trying to get you fucking afraid of something. Yep. But yes, that's our supplement stack. Any further questions on supplements, just let us know. But get your blood work done, do your research, and make sure you're adapting and analyzing as you go through. That's it from us.
One thing last thing I'll end with.
No, that's not it from us.
One thing I'll end with, is, I get asked all the time, like, what do you think of this new supplement that came out that promotes this or talks about this? And most recently, there's these drinks that are coming out that are keto drinks. They have ketones inside of the drinks, right?
Keto IQ.
What's that?
Keto IQ. Is it that drink?
Keto IQ is one of them. There's a lot of them though. They're coming out like crazy now. And so I went down a rabbit hole of course studying the research papers and the data studies. And to me, it's so inconclusive. There might be benefits if you're already in a ketosis state, that it may help with giving you some energy during athletic performances. But again, the studies are so small, and they lack randomized control studies and no long-term studies on it. That to me, it doesn't equate to me switching to something like that or leveraging something like that. It doesn't appear to have much, if any, effect on people that aren't in a ketosis state. So, a lot of the brands out there promoting, hey, it gives you a ton of energy, brain energy, allows you to burn fat more regularly. I don't see that being it. I think a lot of the ketones get absorbed and digested in your body and not actually into your bloodstream. And so it looks like, the transport for that isn't very effective. And to me, again, I'd just be really apprehensive of like, hey, there's this one fringe study that came out with 10 people, that studied it for 2 weeks, that says if you do this, it's going to promote, muscle growth by 10%. Well, that's not enough data to really show that there actually is a benefit there. And so I'm really apprehensive of adding any new supplements or anything new that comes out unless it has a ton of research back behind it in long-term studies. Because a lot of times you don't know the long-term benefits. Like I always get asked all the time about SARMs. SARMs are often considered kind of the lesser of steroids, more natural type of way of looking at it, and uses your estrogen receptors and things like that. So, and there's different SARMs for doing different things. To me, there's not enough data studies in SARMs to say, hey, is it healthy for you or is it not? And there's, it could be creating cardiovascular issues, it could be causing cancer. We don't know any of that because there's no data studies on it. So I'm always like, stay the hell away from it. There's no real reason for it. I mean, if you're really looking at getting into the steroid route, I would probably go more with a steroid that has so many data studies that you know what the risks are from long-term studies, because bodybuilders have been using it for almost 100 years versus something like SARMs that, has been loosely leveraged on the fringe side of the house with no data studies that actually back it up. And again, I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying there's a lot more ways you can mitigate what we know from the health decline aspects of steroids versus something like SARMs. You have no idea what it's actually doing. So, you just got to be really careful what the what the studies say and what's actually being out there and what's being promoted, because a lot of times it's a bunch of BS and it doesn't have a lot of support for it. So just be really careful with the buzzwords and things that come out. A lot of it was like the oxidization of water somehow, is going to increase, blah, blah, blah. And the data studies that are, again, really fringe. Like, it's just, there's a lot of weird stuff out there. Just be really careful and just do it based on what you need for your body and what you want to do to kind of keep yourself healthy and what the data studies show.
Agree. But what about raspberry ketones?
Raspberry ketones taste phenomenally, probably don't do anything. So,
right. That is it. That is it. Final word from us.
Thanks everybody
for listening. If you need anything, at We Hack Health on all the places, and we'll see you next week.
Later.